I swear on my life, the story I'm about to share with you is 100% true. I will not add anything additional to make it fictional. It has all the ingredients one true horror genre requires. It's 1959. My father is walking in the midnight on the most haunted track in the December nights. It's a freezing cold out there, and miles and miles away, there is nobody around him. In the freezing night, and somebody lifted his scarf and touched with a very tiny little hand, put his hand under his neck. With an immediate reaction, father turned around and there was nothing. The wind is making gusts and blows and lifting all the bushes around him, and they're flying all over the place. And there was a one big bush lifted in the air and hit father's body and then fell on almost 10 yards of distance. There was another gust of wind hit that bush and lifted it away, and there was a 1.5 feet tall man with a big turban on his head standing staring at him. Person who was about to become a victim, none other than was my beloved great father. This is the most haunted story you will ever hear, and this is 100% legitimate. Stay with me. I'm Uzar Sipra, and welcome to another episode on the Shocking Mystery on Mirror. In 1947, when Pakistan became a separate state and it was known as Islamic Republic of Pakistan, many Hindus and Sikh families they stayed here for many reasons. One of the reasons was they owned so many properties or businesses, or for some their own personal reasons they stayed here. And similarly, many Muslim families they stayed in India for their own similar issues and their personal problems or reasons. Everything was under development. There was one reliable source of travel. There was a Pakistan Railways. It was and still an active member of International Union of Railway. People love to travel on the trains back in time in the history. I'm talking about 1959. There was one problem with these trains. These trains were mostly delayed or late. But if you have purchased or bought a ticket, you have to be on board on time. If you miss the train, then you have to wait for the whole night at the train station, especially if you're catching the last train. And if you have missed it, you have to stay in the train station for the whole night and wait for the dawn, for the morning to get back home. There was a reason behind it, because there was no any additional transportation. Local transportation was available, especially in those villages or towns, and the distance from the railway station and the towns was on miles away, because these railway stations they were outside of those towns of the boundaries, touching the city limits. Now, even if some of the train stations they were very close to any village or town, you still need to walk for a mile or more than a mile to touch the boundaries of your location, wherever you are living in the town or village. Most of the economy was based on agriculture, and those owners they own domestic animals like horses. They use them to provide the local villagers or fellow villagers transportation services, to make them, they used to call tanga. In Pakistan still you can see tangas at many places, even though it has been developed a lot. Or you may call in easy way buggies or horse wagon with only one horse. attached to those carts. That is called tanga. And those tangas, they used to start the services at 7 a.m. in the morning and stop services, providing services after the second last prayer, which is the Maghrib or sunset. After sunset, there was no any services were available, the transportation services available. The reason is after sunset, there were bandits. Remember, this is 1959, and those towns, they are surrounded by the forest. Many bandits, they were living in the forest. They come out after sunset. They start to rob people. Any traveler who is traveling alone, these robbers, they were heavily armed with the knives, with the rifles. Either they will rob you or they will severely rob you and also injure you. So people hardly they come out after the sunset. They never come out in the nighttime to avoid these robbers. And after the sunset, in that time, people they used to sleep after 8 o'clock, and nobody likes to stay awake after 8 o'clock. So after 7 o'clock, if you are outside, you will find yourself in the darkness, only the wind blowing the bushes and the trees on the dirt road, and then you will encounter those bandits. At that time, the police system was not that strong enough to capture these bandits, but with the passage of time, they developed some system to control these bandits. But there was another route, and there was a very bigger problem on that route. Even the bandits, the robbers, they were scared to death to go to that route, and that was the railway track. Those railway tracks, they were known as the most haunted tracks in the history. Few people have taken the courage to walk on those tracks after 7 p.m. and they were gone missing. They were never found. December nights, they were freezing cold, and on that land, if you are walking in the nighttime in the 100 meters of distance, you can see somebody, if somebody is there, as a shadowy figure because of the mist and the fog. There was extremely freezing nights, and my father used to live in Lahore, and he every weekend he used to travel from Lahore to the town, the village where my grandparents used to live, to meet them. So what happened, my auntie who was still living with my grandparents, with her parents, they were my grandparents, and her marriage date was already set. And on my last visit of my father to meet his parents, my grandparents, grandma asked my father to take the gold which was saved in Lahore with him when he come on the given date, because it was going to arrange so many things to prepare for the marriage for my aunt. The date was already set. Father was very busy working in Lahore. He was amazing, and he was a journalist. He used to write for different news media platforms and make his living. In later years, he became an editor of one of the famous magazine, Pak Jamhuriyat. He was one of the editors, which is still, I think, is running in Lahore. Besides his highly educational background, he had a love for all sports. He was a great sportsman, and when he was with his buddies, with his friends, with a special occasion, on the special occasions, he used to play chess with them. He was very good at the volleyball. He won many titles. He used to practice swordplay. He also had a passion for the guns, the arms, especially the classic Russian revolvers, rifles. By all means, he was a great athlete. He was a great, fearless fighter. So his jobs kept him very much busy, as he has promised his mom, my grandma, to take the gold when on the specific day from Lahore to that town or village. The name of the town of that village is Mandi Warburton. Now, this is A very interesting fact that city was named by and after John Paul Warburton, who was born in 1840 and died in 1919. So one of the very interesting facts for our South Asian people is he was a son of Shah Jahan Begum, and the princess was already married to Sardar Faiz Talab Khan, and she was, what I was during the research I was reading, she was born in Ireland, she was married in Kabul, Afghanistan, and she was died in India. Now this is very interesting. She was already married to Faiz Talab Khan when she met Robert. After Robert's death, she lived in Ludhiana with her elder son John Paul Warburton, a highly ranking officer of Raj period. John Paul Warburton is widely acknowledged for his campaign against dacoits who lived in the forest and looted travelers. The Warburton, which I'm talking about, the town where my grandparents they used to live, that is called now Mandi Warburton. It is the part of the district of Nankana Sahib, where many Sikh families they used to travel to go there and worship there. It is said that Shah Jahan Begum husband left her, and after a year she gave birth to John Paul Warburton. He was also known as Jan Dad Khan. He was given many names. He was brilliant, and he was the one person. This town was named after his name. When he was died in 1919, the British they gave him so much land, which was on his one of the land name was Warburton, which is known as Mandi Warburton today. So he was also known as a Button Khan because he had extreme grip on these dacoits, these bandits, these robbers. He made a system to control those robbers, and his residence later on turned into a high school, which is till this day is still functional. Now my father got ready. He was on schedule. He stopped his all of the work and he went to the railway station in Lahore, and he got a ticket to catch the train around 3 p.m. As I mentioned, there was only one problem. If the train has any mechanical problem or issue, it could be late. So there were so many stations, but there were two very important stations for Mandi Warburton to reach there. One is Shekhupura, and then there is a Feroz Watma. There is an intersection, and then train goes to Mandi Warburton, stop there. And sometime after 9 p.m., train stop their services. So he got the train. By the time he reached Shekhupura, 95% of the passengers they already get off on previous stations. And my father said we were only 5 left in all the train. By the time my father reached there, it was already 6 o'clock. The reason is the train was already late when he got the train from Lahore. But unfortunately, the train was late, and usually he carry his weapon with him, at least the gun. But this time, he didn't carry anything because he was on schedule. But unfortunately, the train stopped, and train had a mechanical issue, so that's why train had to stop at the Shekhupura station. There was not many people were on the station. It was getting darker because the sun was already set. It was December nights, December winters, and days were shorter, the nights were longer. There was a wooden bench side by side, and between the wooden benches there was a table. 3 men were sitting there under the light pole. They were playing chess. These people, they were workers there. They knew my father, and sometime it happened few times that train is late, so they used to offer my father tea. They used to drink tea together, and they talk a bit, And sometime my father stay at the station and wait for the dawn, wait for the morning, and then he start his journey again. But this time was different. They invited father for the tea. They drank a tea, and then they said, since you are here, why don't we play some chess and then keep drinking tea, keep us warm. And then the station master, he announced the train is late. How late? It was a 4 hours late. Let me explain to you like this. Okay, this is Lahore, this is Sheikhupura, this is Feroz Watma with the intersection, and this is Mandiwar Burton. Now, the distance from Lahore to Mandiwar Burton is 107 kilometers. By train at the time, it used to take 2.5 hours to cover this distance. The most important two stations are Sheikhupura and then intersection Feroz Watwa, and then Mandiwar Burton. The distance from Sheikhupura to Mandiwar Burton is 32 kilometers. The distance from Sheikhupura to Feroz Watwa is 26 kilometers. And the rest of the 6 kilometers from Feroz Watwa to Mandiwar Burton is leftover. Between Feroz Watwa to Mandiwar Burton, there is one village which is on the side. We also have many relatives used to live there till this day. Father was a little bit worried, and the station master, he was a friend of father, and he suggested, why don't you stay here and leave the station in the morning? And my father said, no, I have to leave because I have some important things to do. It was very, very important to reach home no matter what and how. The station master gone back to his room. They were playing the chess and enjoying the tea. And after half an hour, the station master announced the train luckily is coming in half an hour. And this train will take the rest of the passengers to Feroz Watwa. So remember, there were 5 passengers left. 4 passengers, excluding my father, they decided to stay at the station. There was one room for the passengers to wait or stay for overnight and wait for the morning and then go to their destinations. 4 of them, they decided to stay there. Father decided to take the train. He took that train halfway. Remember, it's like a 26 kilometers distance. Halfway, around 10 or 12 kilometers, train stopped. It had some mechanical issues, and he had to repair or fix those mechanical issues before it will continue its journey to reach to Feroz Watwa, the intersection junction. It stopped there for 1 hour. By the time it reached there, it was already around 11:30 or 12 a.m. When he reached there, Feroz Watwa, those station master and those workers, they used to work there and stay there. They were very good friend of father. Same thing happened. They advised father, hey, you should stay here and leave in the morning. My father said, no, it cannot be, because I have already promised my mother that I will reach there no matter what and how. It is very, very important, and I know my mother, she won't get sleep until she will see me, and she will be praying all the night on the prayer mat, praying for my safety. I don't want her to stay awake. I want her to get a proper sleep. One of the men, he said, okay, why don't we do like this? Have a supper with us, and we have a very good mutton we have cooked. We should eat together, and meanwhile you will finish your supper and you will have some time to think over your decision. So eventually they had a supper together. They talked a bit, and by the time it was already around 12 a.m., my father said, no, I'm sticking with my decision. I need to leave. They insisted, my father, so much that there are the bandits on the way, why do you want to risk your life? And my father said, I won't go to that route. I will rather choose the railway track, which is known as the most haunted track. Even the bandits, those robbers, they scared to death to go to those routes in the nighttime. Station master, who was a friend of my father, he said, remember, in the nighttime, the demons, they play around those railway tracks. Nobody goes through those tracks. My father said that, I don't care. I need to leave. So he said goodbye to his friends. He took the bag of gold, which was carrying from Lahore. He took the bag of gold and he started to walk on the railway tracks. My father said, as I walked for a few minutes, I turned around, I looked back, and the station, Firozpur station, was already vanished. In the mist or fog, I cannot see anything. As I mentioned, he was fearless. We belong to a very religious family. We have so many mosques. We have so many madrasas. Our grandparents, they used to teach Quran to those jinns. They are Muslim jinns, and there were many Muslim jinns. They were students. They used to learn Quran in our madrasas. So my father said, as I walked more 30 minutes, and I saw around me, there was a pitch silence except the gusts of wind. They were blowing, they were making whistle sounds, and then the flying bushes, they were flying all over the place. And the railway track, it was shining under the moonlight. It was a very dramatic situation. As my father is walking, he was wearing the gown, the overcoat, and he was having a very warm scarf around his neck. And he was very much focused on the railway track, and he was walking on the direction to reach to Mandi Warburton. The distance from Firozpur to Mandi Warburton was 6 kilometers. If you are walking non-stop in a very normal speed, you can reach within 4.5 hours or earlier. And then what happens, my father said, I felt somebody just whispered in my ear something which was unclear. And I stopped there and I turned around again and I saw there was nothing. And I stopped there for a minute or two to figure out, is my brain is playing with me? Or what? My father, he stood there and he's trying to focus all kind of sounds they were making by the wind, or he's trying to focus the similar sound he just have heard, and there was nothing. And he thought maybe the brain is playing with him, and he started to walk again. As my father walked for more 15 minutes, my father said, and when I heard this for the first time, I have a goosebump all over my body. And then my father said, I felt extremely real that somebody lifted my scarf and a very tiny hand touched my neck for a second and a half and lifted it and vanished. And my father immediately reacted to that thing and turned around, and there was nothing. This time my father already knew he is facing some kind of encounters. He stood there for about I stood there for almost 5 to 10 minutes to figure out what is going on here. He had similar encounters on a regular basis, but he believed those Muslim jinns, they can't be here. They cannot do this because this is forbidden to disturb the travelers. This is forbidden in Islam, and those jinns, they know the punishment, so they can't be. But something else, something is there. Now he's standing there waiting for what is the next is coming for him. As he stood there for 15 minutes, the gust of winds, they become very strong, and immediately clouds they started to make a shield between land and the moonlight. They stopped the moonlight to drop on the land, and it's getting darker. So it means it's going to rain. As I said, this story has all the ingredients that one true horror genre requires. So it is getting darker, and the gust of winds, they are blowing very hard, and they are blowing whistles. And then the bushes are flying all over the place, and one big bush came on one direction, hit my father, and then landed around 10 yards of distance. 10 yards? Yeah, it's about 30 feet distance. And there another gust of wind took that bush away. And my father said, I saw one little man, 1.5 feet tall, and he has a very big turban on his head. He was not moving at all. He was just staring in my father's eyes, and my father's eyes staring directly to him. But it was not that clear because 30 feet of distance was, and also the noise of the winds, and the dust was lifted from the dirt road on along the railway track. It's not making clear everything, but he knew there was a man 1 foot tall looking at me, staring at me. After a few minutes, he started to walk, and my father said he was walking like floating in the air, and then his feet was hardly touching the ground, but he was making gesture that he is walking on the ground. As he was walking, my father said I started to recite Ayatul Kursi, the Quranic verses, the verses from the Quran, very loudly. As he heard, maybe he heard, and then he stopped there. The distance between my father and that little man was now almost 10 feet. This time my father could clearly see his face. And my father said, when I saw his face, he was so adorable child with adorable smile on his face, and he was wearing very big turban on his head. Before my father speak anything, he said, don't worry, I'm not your enemy, I'm your friend. My father said, I know whoever you are, don't bother me, and you don't think I'm alone. Allah is watching us, He is with me, and you knew already why you stopped when I was reciting the Quranic verses. You knew what I'm reciting, and you knew my messages to you. And he said that, please stop here, I'm your friend, I'm not here to harm you, I'm just a kid. And his voice was also like a kid's voice, like my father said, like a 7 years old kid. And he was so adorable. And then my father said that, who are you? He moved his head down, face to the ground, and then he stopped there. He stood there for like 10 minutes, and my father was trying to conclude what he should do, what he shouldn't do, and he is very much focused looking at him. For 10 minutes he didn't move at all. He was standing there like a statue. And after 10 minutes he lifted his face, looked at my father and smiled, and he said, look at your right hand shoulder. Do you see fire? And my father said, as I looked at my right shoulder, and on almost 50 feet of distance, I see a big fire, and there was a stage. And I saw there was like a throne, a man with a similar height, with a big turban. He is sitting on that throne, and there is a fire very much around in a circle. In the circle, there are 10 kids, 10 children. They are sitting around that fire. And he said, you see, that is our chief. He wants to meet you. And he keeps smiling. He wants to meet you? Could you please follow me? I take you there. We are your friends. My father said, do not bother me, and what I'm about to recite, I won't be responsible if you have anything coming for you. And he said, no, please stop. My father said, I have no idea how and why he couldn't move a further step. 10 children, they rushed to me. And I already hear the thunderclaps, and there was a lightning striking the land. They said, please trust us. Our chief, he wants to meet you. Do you see? He is very friendly. And my father said, I have no idea why and how something was pushing me. I started to walk with them. Those 10 children, they're walking in front of me, and that adorable child, he was walking on left hand side with me, and there was thundering sounds and gusts of winds making whistles, and it was like a horrible moment. It was very frightening. And then after a minute, my father started to walk, and he smiled again. He came closer to my father, and he started to walk, and my father started to follow him to that the group of people and the throne where he saw the person he was standing on there as their chief with a very big chair. My father said, I was started to walk to that throne. That throne was also started to move further away, and he was keep walking, and the throne was keep going away until he walked like for 30 minutes. And he was on the first position that he was standing on the railway track. Now he is far away from that track distance. He didn't know where he's going. It was so freezing night. All in sudden his body was catching heat, and he was feeling extremely hot. He removed his scarf and removed his overcoat, and then he realized something is terribly wrong is going on with him. He started to recite Surah Yasin, one of the very important chapter from the Quran, very loudly. As he started to recite Surah Yasin, the baby, the very adorable baby, he was walking, he started to make very creepy noises, crying, screaming, and then he rushed with speed and vanished in the thin air. As my father, he said, he started to become more louder to recite Surah Yasin. As he was keep repeating those verses, those 10 children rushed and they stopped few feet of distance, and he said that please stop. And then he said, I started to recite very loud, and those 10 children, they started to make extreme creepy noises. They started to cry, and the fire started to capture them, and then they ran away, and in seconds they vanished in thin air. The all left was my father, the throne, and the chief. When my father saw his face was like a red apple with anger, and he got closer to my father and he said, if you knew not what you are doing, we already have taken you. And he made a horrible sound and he rushed to one direction, and everything was vanished in a second. And my father realized he was somewhere, he cannot understand where he was standing, and it started to rain. And my father, he took the rain, that gown, the overcoat from his head, and luckily his gold, the bag of gold, it was with him, and he started to walk. It took him almost 2 hours to find the rail track, and then he started to walk until he reached home. The morning adhan was heard. It was already morning when he entered the house, and he saw the grandma. She was on the prayer mat, and when she saw him, she said, in my deep heart, I already knew something's going on with you. But Alhamdulillah, I'm very much thankful to Allah who is protecting you, and my prayers have been protecting you. And by the time he reached home, he got very heavy fever. It took him few days to recover from that fever. So this was the story for today. And if you are a fan of the dark, mysterious horror stories, true crimes stories, and the movie reviews, I'm going to cover horror and thrills. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you have your own story you want to share with me, you can drop me on my Instagram as a direct message. So I will narrate on your behalf. So as always, please take care of yourself and your surrounding. I am Zaz Sipra. Until next time.